Alright, so in my last video I talked about a bunch of new information about the Model Y. I reviewed the carb certification and how that shows it's coming very soon. I reviewed the VINs, and that's vehicle identification numbers, not VIN numbers because that's redundant. Thank you, commenters. But yeah, the VIN is showing up in the NHTSA database, showing that we're very close to Model Y. We saw a tweet that was confirming Model Y production starting around February 1st, and then we saw some new updates about the design from Michael Hughes on Twitter, which were super helpful, and it showed us some power folding seats, all sorts of stuff because he actually got to sit in the car. If you haven't seen that video, it's linked up here or in the description below, and then this is following up on that. For today, we have some new tweets from someone else that got to sit in a Model Y. We have a sighting of the Model Y out in Minnesota testing in the snow. We have a Reddit user who claims that they actually got a call to schedule their delivery, and a bunch more, so make sure to stay tuned and hit that subscribe button so that you stay up to date on all the Model Y updates I'm going to be bringing out. First up, Model Ys were spotted doing cold weather testing out in Minnesota, and that was spotted and photographed by James L. And he said the degrees at the time were 0 degrees Fahrenheit or minus 17 degrees Celsius, so very cold. And it appears that they're probably doing cold testing, probably because they've gotten some flack in the past for designing their cars only for warm climates, because they're a California company, and they haven't thought as much about cold weather, but looks like they're doing that testing of the Model Y, so that's great. Next up, another Twitter user was able to test out the Model Y, and he was able to sit inside of it as long as he didn't take photos, similar to Michael Hughes in my last video. I'm personally curious if these employees that are showing people and letting people sit in these cars are allowed to do this, or if Tesla's doing this on purpose so that people can leak tiny bits of information to kind of build up the hype of Model Y, because I'm definitely feeling the hype. So Ben on Twitter, at MacBentosh, tweeted, quote, "OMG, just sat in a Mode Y," yes, he means Model Y, "rear seats collapsed with buttons on the left side, rear seats appeared to slide forwards and back." So it seems like those power folding seats that Michael Hughes talked about are kind of confirmed and also clarified here. So it seems like when I heard power folding seats, I was picturing you press a button and it goes vzz, but it seems like it's more like you press a button and it goes phew, which is still awesome. And Michael Hughes did say kind of power folding seats because that's what he meant. You press a button and it does power it to fold down, but it kind of collapses, and Ben clarified that, so that's really great to hear. I'm still curious if it folds up. I'm guessing if it collapses down that it's not going to have the motor in there to actually fold up at the press of a button, but we'll see what happens there. Also, the fact that the rear seats apparently slide forwards and back is a really good sign. He was in the 5-seater, so if you're in a 5-seater and you have a bunch of stuff in the back, it adds some flexibility. You can push those seats forward if you have passengers in there, and you can utilize more space. And then on top of that, I think it's really going to impact the 7-seater, and more information on that in a second. Then when asked about headroom, Ben said, quote, "maybe 1 to 2 inches less than the X." And he's actually a Model X owner himself, so he's very familiar with the headroom there. So to hear that it's only 1 to 2 inches less is really impressive. I didn't entirely understand his next tweet because it wasn't fully written out, but I think he's saying that he is 6 foot 6 inches and he fit in there great. The tweet said, quote, "6 foot 6 inches and felt like I was in my X. Great headroom and legroom." So I've seen a lot of comments from people saying I'm 6'4" or I'm 6'1". Will I fit comfortably in this car? Because they're worried about it because the Model 3 is a little tight, and the Model Y should hopefully fix that for them, but they're really tall and they need lots of headroom. And it looks like it might have great headroom. According to this, it seems like Ben is 6 foot 6 inches tall, and he said he had plenty of legroom and plenty of headroom. And he's also comparing it to his own Model X, which if you're a Model X owner, you're going to know a lot better than if you're just someone who tried it out at the store. One other response he said was responding to someone who asked what the width is like for the second row, and he said, "like my S." So props to Ben owning a Model S and a Model X. That's pretty awesome. And then also props for all this new information. We really appreciate it. I can't imagine the width is going to be the same because the car itself isn't going to be as wide as a Model S, but we'll see when it comes out. So he was in the 5-seater, but also new this week we saw new images of the third row of seats in the 7-seater version of the Model Y. So the 7-seater option is supposed to be coming out in 2021 for an extra $3,000, and it adds a third row with those 2 extra seats. And most people don't feel like these are actually going to fit human beings, with some pretty funny renders of how people are going to actually fit in these seats. For the average person like me, 5 seats are totally fine. but for people who really need 7 seats, I think Tesla could be a little more clear about how big these seats are going to be, and maybe once it actually hits production, they're going to be very clear about that. So these new images surfaced that show the rear seats and show not a ton of legroom, but really, like, what did you expect? It's going to be small, it's a small car, and the back slopes so the headroom isn't going to be a lot. What did we expect? But my next question is, where is the second row positioned? According to Ben, he said that the second row can slide forwards and back, so I'm going to guess that the second row is slid all the way back in these photos. And so there's maximum legroom in the second row and absolutely minimum legroom in the third row. But if you had passengers in there, you would slide the second row forward maybe like 6 inches and you'd be a little bit tighter. Hopefully you'd be mostly comfortable there in the second row, and then the third row would actually have some legroom. I think in these photos that the second row are just in their default position to make it the most comfortable for the second row, and they're not even thinking about the third row, and then someone snuck a photo of it and it looks tiny. It looks like 3 inches of legroom. In any case, even if you move that second row, it's going to be really small, but let's compare it to what other cars look like for their third row. So let's take a look at the Toyota RAV4. If we look at the third row of seats, it looks a lot more spacious than that photo of the Model Y, but then look at the position of the second row. It's slid quite a bit forward. And then we have the Subaru Forester, another popular crossover vehicle, and look at where the third row of seats are there and how tight it is. Pretty similar to the Model Y. Now let's look at the popular Honda CR-V, and you can see the third row is yet again tiny, and the second row is scooted up. So I think that Tesla just hasn't released official photos and videos of this third row, and people are running with leaked photos and the fact that the back slopes and thinking that it's just impossible people can fit back there. But I think if you scoot the second row forward, you could actually have some legroom in the third row and make it comparable to other cars like the Toyota RAV4 or the Honda CR-V. The real only question for me comes in the headroom. Still though, if you have a family of 7 and you're going to pre-order this for 7 seats, I would at least hold off on that until you can actually sit your family in the car and see what it's like. But who knows, maybe when the car comes out we'll see those rear seats and realize that only elves can fit in there and everyone should just stick with the 5-seater. And then the last bit of news on Model Y deliveries comes from Reddit user QUAF4, who posted confirming that Tesla Model Y deliveries are going to start next month. So this Reddit user says they actually got a call from a Tesla employee to schedule the delivery of their Model Y. And they said they gave them details saying the performance version is coming out in February, and then the all-wheel drive, which is what this person ordered, is coming in March or April. Now it's kind of weird that they would schedule a all-wheel drive before a performance, but this person said that they kind of took that as meaning they were trying to upsell them, like, hey, you can get it sooner and you get all these upgrades if you get the performance, which comes out in February. The other interesting thing is that this person is located in Canada, and usually Canadian deliveries come after the US, and it appears that it would be happening at the same time here, so that's a little fishy, but, you know, who knows? My red flags are that this is the first delivery schedule we've heard of, and why is it in Canada? And why is it an all-wheel drive version instead of a performance? Is everyone else just keeping their mouths shut, or did this actually happen? The user also followed up by saying that they confirmed the 7-seater is going to be coming out in Q3. So it doesn't seem too trustworthy, but it kind of falls in with the timeline of all the other evidence we've seen, and I don't really see what this Reddit user would gain by posting this online if it wasn't true. So hopefully, based on this information, along with all the other evidence we've seen, we'll see the performance version of the Model Y in February, and then the all-wheel drive coming in March and April. Then after that, we'll see the rear-wheel drive, then the standard range, and the 7-seater. As we saw with the 7-seater, it looks like that third row is going to be pretty small, but it might actually be comparable to other crossover SUVs out there. And if you scoot that second row forward, which it sounds like it'll be able to do, you might actually have some reasonable legroom in the back there. The headroom in the front of the car seems comparable to a Model X, and it sounds like the second row is going to have those power folding seats, at least the power folding collapse button, where you press the button and it does it all for you. Not sure if it'll work in the reverse direction. As this video goes live, we're about 5 days away from the Q4 earnings call, which is where everyone expects to hear everything about the Model Y. The last news we heard about the Model Y was at the Q3 earnings call, so I totally expect that to happen. I'll make sure to make a video with all the new details about the Model Y as soon as they come out, so make sure you subscribe to this channel to stay up to date. In the meantime, I can't wait to get my all-wheel drive Model Y, which hopefully could be in March or April, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.